So today we're going to be looking at how we can translate some simple indicators from PineScript here in Tradingview over to Backtrader and Python. There are many reasons you might want to do this. You might want to have more control over your strategies, your indicators. You might want to build some other system in Python that you want to integrate with it. Maybe you want to integrate this as part of a trading system that you've got running. Or maybe you just prefer Python. So this is a really simple strategy here, sort of like a long-term swing trading strategy. Basically, what happens is that if we're within 10% of the 200-week moving average, which has historically been very important for Bitcoin, then if it's also a Monday, so if day of week equals 1, then we purchase 1 Bitcoin. And we just keep doing that every week, up to a maximum of 10 times here. And then on the exit side of things, basically we have a close threshold here. And so when the price gets to that multiple of the 200-week moving average, then we exit the position and we add 1 to this multiple. So over here, it's going to be 9, 10 times the 200-week simple moving average. And that's pretty much the entire strategy here. You can see it's been pretty successful in Bitcoin's past. Who knows whether it will continue to do so. So let's think about how we're going to convert this now into Backtrader. First thing you'll want to do, obviously, is just grab yourself some sort of Python environment here. I've got a virtual environment. You can use, anything in PyCharm, something like that. And you're also going to need some price data. Doesn't matter which asset you use, although obviously for the indicator I'm using in the video, Bitcoin price data will work really well. So if you want to follow along with what's in the video, you can download that from this link, which I'll leave in the description. Basically, Quandl got bought out by NASDAQ, and so now we have this. You can just sign in with a fake email account and download a CSV. And then once you get that CSV, open it up. Make sure you sort it ascending so that the first date is first and the last date is last. By default, it comes the other way around, and Backtrader really hates that. So make sure you sort the data before we use it in the video. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up a Python file here. So we'll say tutorial.py. Now, to actually get things installed, so if I do import Backtrader as BT, and I'll also import datetime as well, so from datetime import datetime, you're going to need a couple of different modules installed. The first obviously being Backtrader. Now, as of the time that this video is being recorded, the default Backtrader that you get just by doing pip install Backtrader is bugged in a few different ways. So I would recommend going and grabbing Backtrader 2 here from GitHub. So there's install instructions down here somewhere. So you just do pip install this link here, and that will grab you the Backtrader 2. I highly recommend doing this in a virtual environment. So if you want to get yourself in a virtual environment, you can just do virtual env and then the names env, for example. But I already have mine, so I'm just going to do source venv bin 90bit. Otherwise, it might conflict with your existing Backtrader installation. So again, recommended to have a virtual environment. You'll also want to install matplotlib. You can just do that with pip install matplotlib. And you'll also want the requests library if you're planning on using Yahoo Finance data. Backtrader has a implementation of some of the Y Finance stuff where you can pull data directly from the Yahoo Finance API. We're not going to bother with that, but if you do want that, then make sure to install requests. Again, you'll want matplotlib if you're going to be plotting anything. All right. Let's really get started now. So we'll open up that tutorial file again, tutorial.py. And the main focus of this video is going to be around this class, which I'm going to define here. So I'm going to say class swing trade. Now this class is going to inherit from bt.signal strategy. And the point of this class is it's going to have all our logic in there. Now, if this class were to get too big and you started needing custom indicators and that kind of thing, you can also define those, but we're not going to be doing that in this video. We're just going to keep all of the logic in here. So when this indicator gets to a certain point and when the day of the week is Monday, then we buy. If not, then we sell. All that kind of logic is going to be contained within this class and within two very important functions within that class, which I'll explain in a minute. Basically the init function and the next function. Before we get into that though, it's probably important to go ahead and boot up the Cerebro here. So if we go Cerebro is equal to bt.cerebro. This is like the main brain of Backtrader, that's why it's called Cerebro. Okay, and then we'll do cerebro.add strategy. And we'll type in swing trade. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is go to the documentation here. So just go to the README on Backtrader. And I'm going to copy this class in here. This is just so that we can test everything's working before we start using our own strategy. So I'll comment this one out here and just put a new one in. And I'll call this one SMA cross. So this is just an example that comes with Backtrader. When one moving average gets above the other, you buy, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and load in our data. So to do that, let's just define data 0 is equal to bt.feeds.generic CSV data. Now that that's out of the way, then you're going to want to select the name. So the data name, mine's just saved as btc.csv. You'll also want the from date and the to date. So you want date time. I'm going to start from 2011 and the first, and then you want the to date over here. So it essentially allows you to chop your data. So say you've got 50 years of stock data. If you only want the past 5 years, you can use this from date and to date in order to cut that data as you desire. So I'm going to move this all the way up to 2021 and we'll go to the 8th because I believe that's as far as I have data for. And then from here on, we're basically just selecting which columns we have and where they are. So if I open up my CSV over here, so btc.csv that I got from the NASDAQ download, we can see that the date or the date time column is our first column here. So computers count from 0, so this is index 0. And the actual value, the price of Bitcoin on that day, is in our first column here, so it's index number 1. So let's go ahead and let Backtrader know about that. So we have date time, and we said that was the 0th index. And then it wants you to specify open, high, low, close. So I'm just going to make them all the same. And we're just going to say that they're all, the first column. It doesn't really make a difference when you're talking about months and years time frames for a single trade. Although if this was, intraday trading, then it would be very important that you had the open, high, low, close correct, or if you had some kind of strategy that relies on those values. But for us, open, high, low, close, we can just set them to be the same value on that column. There's also volume and open interest. We don't have either of those, so I'm going to set them to -1. That just tells Backtrader that it's not included in the data. So if you do open interest, it's equal to -1. And then you'll also need DT format. So it's the date time format for this particular column. And you can find the representations online of which corresponds to which, but percentage capital Y means year in 4 numbers. So it's 2014, that would be percentage Y, and then we have a dash, then we have the month, so dash, and then percentage lowercase m for the month, and then dash percentage D, lowercase d, for the date. If you had the hour and the minutes there, you could go ahead and fill that in, something like that, but we don't in our case, so it's just going to look like this. we can go ahead and close that bracket finally now. And then we'll do cerebro.add data. And then we'll add our data source here. So data 0. And then cerebro.broker.set cache. So we've got some cache on hand. Cerebro.run. And then we'll finally want to do cerebro.plot. And you'll also want to set volume equals to false here, otherwise it'll get confused because we don't have a volume column. Obviously, if you do have a volume column and you've picked the correct index here, then you can leave this option out. Okay, so let's just see what happens now that we've got our basic data in, we've got Backtrader installed. Hopefully this will work. Cerebro is not defined. Basically, there's a spelling mistake somewhere here. Yeah, there we go, at the bottom. You can see Cerebro, not Cerebro. Let's try that again. Not doing well on our spelling mistakes today. There we go. So it seems to be buying and executing. We don't particularly care about this strategy. All that we care about is that it's actually plotting everything and it's making trades. So let's go ahead and actually implement our strategy now. So we can go ahead and get rid of this. And then, yeah, we'll comment this one out and use our own swing trade here. So the first thing that we're probably going to want to do here is to define the init function. And this is a very special function within Backtrader. It's basically where you're going to want to define anything that can be calculated in advance. So you see here in the SMA cross, it's calculating the simple moving average 1 and 2 and the crossover, because you don't need to do anything crazy to calculate the simple moving average. You just take the moving average of the data. But if you had some crazy function, which is some kind of logic for execution, which is something like, if yesterday's close price is less than today's close price, and this specific indicator for yesterday's values are greater than this, if you have something crazy like that, you have to use the next function, which I'll show you in a second. But for anything simple that can be calculated in advance of actually going through each individual bar, you want to put that in here in the init function, mostly just for efficiency reasons, although you could just use next for everything and it would work. So let's just define our simple moving average here. So as I mentioned before, I'm using the 1400 day or the 200 week moving average here. So that's going to be equal to bt.ind.sma, and then period is equal to 1400. I'm saying self.sma1 here because I want to be able to call that in a different function in a second. So this is the next function over here. And this also takes self. So the purpose of this function generally is that it's evaluated on every single bar, so that you can put all of your logic in here for buying and selling, and it will actually simulate the bars occurring as if they're occurring actually one after the other. So let's think about our buy conditions here. So go back to Tradingview, and my buy condition was that the close divided by the simple moving average is less than 1.1, and the day of the week is equal to 1. So the day of the week is relatively easy to get, so you can do weekday is equal to self.data, so that's going to be this data down here, this data 0, dot date time dot date dot iso weekday. I can just print that out here, and you'll see what I mean about this next function here. So if I print weekday out, you can see it's just going to go through for however many thousands of days we have. It simulates each and every day inside this next function. So we've got that. We've got the weekday now. So if self.data.close, and then we'll do brackets 0 here. So this means the current close, the current day's close, is less than the SMA, so the current value of the SMA, so self.SMA1 0. So again, today's SMA. You can use -1 for yesterday's SMA value, but we're just going to use 0 here. And then multiply that by 1.1. So that's my particular buying logic here. It's the same thing as I did on Tradingview, there's just no division. I've used if the close is less than the SMA times 1.1 and the weekday is equal to 1. So it gives you a number from 1 to 7. 1 is Monday, 7 is Sunday. The reason why I'm doing that is just so it doesn't buy every single day and we end up with too much Bitcoin. I wanted to make something this realistic strategy that you can actually use. And then we'll just put in here a self.buy. So we're just going to buy some Bitcoin. At this stage, it's probably important to tell Backtrader how much Bitcoin we actually want to buy with each purchase. Now, sizes are a whole thing in Backtrader, but the easiest way to do this is just to tell it to buy a fixed amount or sell a fixed amount on each trade. And so to do that, we can just go over here to the Backtrader documentation in the sizes section, and there's a nice line we can copy here. So add sizer fixed, so fixed size stake equals 20, so it buys 20 lots of whatever you've got. In our case, that would be 20 Bitcoin. We don't want to buy 20 Bitcoin, we want to buy 1 Bitcoin. So let's do that. And that will now add the sizer to our system here. Okay, so we've got that. Let's implement our selling logic here. So our selling logic, again, going back to PineScript, was that if the close divided by the 200-week simple moving average is greater than our close threshold, which is just some number that we've defined, then close the trade. So we need to do a few things. We need to define this parameter, and then we need to do the actual calculation. So to define a parameter, we can just set something up here. So we'll say params is equal to, and then close threshold, and then we'll give that a value of 3. So if you read the documentation for Backtrader, it's often recommended to just give your parameters here as a list of tuples. I think you can also use dictionaries if you want, but this tends to be the format that people use. So, okay, so what we want is if self.data.close, the current value, so 0, is greater than self.SMA1, so the current value, multiplied by self.params.close threshold, and we actually have some Bitcoin to sell, so self.position.size is greater than 0, then we want to sell. So we'll do self.close size is equal to 1. You could also do self.sell here. There are some differences between them, but for just the purposes of this tutorial, it's not overly important. I'll leave that as self.close. And then another part of our strategy here was we wanted to increment close threshold. So we'll do that. We'll do self.params.close threshold plus equals 1. And we'll also put a little print statement here. So we'll say f sold 1 BTC for, and then we'll just put this in the f string here. So self.data.close 0. Again, there's a whole fancy system for logging trades, analyzing your trades in Backtrader. That's much more of an in-depth topic that could be 10 videos on its own. So again, I'll leave that out of this one. And we'll put the same sort of message over here when we buy. So we'll do buy 1 BTC. So let's give this a run and see what happens. So we get a nice little plot here, and we note that it did quite well over here. The only thing that hasn't happened is it hasn't reset that value of close threshold. So we haven't got any closers over here. So fairly simple to sort that out. We just set this to 3 over here, or whatever value you like. Run this again. And we can see that that's worked quite nicely. If we zoom in, we can see that we're buying trades every week and not just every day, so that we're not overextending ourselves, and that these sales are all coming through at the prices that we want. All of this is just within Python, so if you want to build some sort of tool to analyze these returns, you can do that within the Backtrader ecosystem itself using analyzers or just some in-depth logger, or you could build this yourself. It's up to you. So that's the basics of how we can take something from PineScript and build that into Backtrader, just convert the strategies over, get everything set up, get our data loaded. So that's it for this video.